Okay. So I think it's interesting that we know when we wake up in the morning and all throughout the day, the thoughts never stop. We know that. So I think in our culture we have a very strong assumption that it's just sort of normal insofar as it's just the way it is, and we don't really seem to have many techniques to change it. I don't think there's much in Western psychology that there's no techniques that we've discovered or cultivated that help us really unpack and unravel all these crazy thoughts that just seem to pop out of nowhere. Our mother didn't necessarily teach us. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? And then secondly, we don't, and then not to just mention that, but we don't really pay attention to it until things get very emotional. Then we pay attention. So the Buddhist approach to life, if you break it right down, get to the very essence of it, it's Buddhist expertise is the human mind, how it works, how to understand, how to know what's going on in there, and then how to sort out what is going on in there so we can change it. I mean, really, it's as simple as that, which seems sort of a bit surprising. I don't know why it's surprising to us, because it's not really how we think. I mean, in our culture, we have psychology, probably Mr. Freud. Certainly, he was the one who started, psychotherapy, all that business, coming up with his views about who we are and what all this unconscious about. Mr. Jung, all these people. So it's a fairly new endeavor for us, apart from our religions, So now we're seeing Buddhist views more and more coming up, very popular in the West. So the success in the Buddhist approach, the idea in the Buddhist approach is that we've got this potential that the mind can be managed, not just managed, but fundamentally reconfigured, meaning the thoughts in there, which seem to be the basis of our emotions, aren't they? The ones we don't pay attention to. So in one way, we can see we understand very naturally in our culture, especially in our modern scientific culture, our culture in which we have very brilliant systems for learning things intellectually, or learning to become a musician, learning to become a cook, learning to become a carpenter. We're very good at this. And we know it's got to do with the mind. We might say it like this, but we know that the beginning of being a good cook is the mind. You have to learn theories. You learn recipes, you learn theories, you learn the principles of cooking, all the areas of knowledge that we have, music, architecture, math, all these things, which we're good at, we're brilliant at it. We all know it's to do with the mind. We all know that we can reconfigure the mind. We all know that you can start having zero thoughts in your mind about music. No knowledge, no knowledgeable thoughts about music. We're utterly ignorant. We know it's possible to then learn musical theories about music, meaning thoughts about music, to an incredibly sophisticated degree. And then we know that you can, put your hands on the piano and slowly express this complex language on that piece of paper there and turn into a marvelous musician. I mean, we don't speak about it like this. We know that's completely possible. And we know, therefore, that our mind's not set in stone. That anybody with zero knowledge can turn into a very knowledgeable musician. We know we can do that. We know we can do that with carpentry, cooking, and we have confidence and we see the results of it. So we know it's possible. We get a good teacher, someone who's done it before, we learn from them and we learn to do it ourselves. We know that. Same with tennis, sport, anything, we're brilliant at all these things. We're really brilliant. But you've got to admit, it's kind of fascinating that we have no real agreement about, methodology for how to understand all these thoughts that seem to pop up out of nowhere. And we call them anger, depression, low self-esteem, kindness, love, compassion. We don't seem to know where they come from. Mother doesn't seem to teach us. We can learn from our mother, but we know that kind mothers give birth to angry children. So mother didn't teach. We know that mothers can give birth to psychotic children who want to go and rape and kill. We don't like to think that. We see the evidence of it. So we're confused about where it all comes from. Where does all this come from? Mother looks at her own mind and sees no evidence of wanting to kill. She's got a child who wants to kill, or a son who grows up and becomes, a killer, for example. So it's puzzling to us. I mean, we don't think of it like this, but it's true, isn't it? So we're really confused about where it comes from. So we have to look in the brain. If you're a Christian, I mean, we can't blame God. We don't want to blame God. Gives us. We say, if you're a Christian, God gives you a mind, gives you a soul, and then this mind. Then He gives us free will, as we put it. We can't blame God for our tendency to be angry. Can't do that. So we try to blame our mother, but we notice she never did it before, so it's a bit puzzling to us. But the point I'm really getting at is, we know that these uncontrolled thoughts are there, and I think even in Western psychology, they say it's like 1,000 thoughts a second. We don't seem to have many techniques for understanding them all, or even knowing what we can do with them. And because they're so some seem to be so intensely strong at the core of our being somehow, that we don't have much confidence that we can change them. I think it's like that. And we certainly individually, whether Mr. Jung says you can or not, we're not sure, but how we feel ourselves is, this is me. So we define that. We might define ourselves in terms of being a carpenter. We mainly define ourselves in terms of what we call our emotions, isn't it? She's a kind person. He's an angry person. She's a depressed person. These emotional components of us. Well, these are Buddha's expertise. You mightn't like it, but that's what it is. And the key technique in Buddhism that is the skill we need to learn to develop to really do the job of digging deep and unpacking and unraveling is this brilliant technique these genius Indians before the Buddha, more than 3,000 years ago, invented, called single-pointed concentration. Totally incredible, sophisticated psychological skill, that is there available to anybody who wants to learn it. Okay, it takes a while to do it. It's intensely difficult because it's the absolute opposite of the way our mind tends to be every day. This approach, this technique, and I mean, the evidence is that we can access more subtle levels of mind that we don't even posit as existing in the modern psychology, in neuroscience. And the mind's got this phenomenal potential. This is what it's here. So, of course, because we think of Buddhism as religion, we don't take it very seriously. I mean, it's just mystical, that's just belief, that's how we think of religion. But it's practical psychology. Okay, it's a difficult job because our mind is so seem to be programmed in these intense tendencies that our mother didn't teach us, that we seem to have what we call instinct, isn't it? But basically, Buddha says we have the ability, lots of hard work, to fundamentally change these conceptual stories in our head, which is really what they are. I mean, it's rather encouraging, isn't it, to think we can do that. So, and then the practical question is, why would you want to? Well, the Buddha's approach is from his own investigation. He's not a creator. He's this clever fellow who was involved in this intense system that as a Lama, I always quote the Dalai Lama says that these amazing Indians more than 3,000 years ago, well before the Buddha, who were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self. Of course, we thought it was Mr. Freud or somebody, but 3,000 years ago. And only now, really, are we in this modern world paying attention to it, giving it some serious thought, and attempting to practice it. So our mind's not set in stone, basically. We know it already when it comes to musical theory and cooking theory and carpentry. We know that, but when it comes to this stuff, we don't believe it. And why, I suppose, is because they seem to be very strongly, deeply ingrained in us, what we call instinctive. So we have the Christian view, it puzzles us, we don't know where it comes from. The materialist view, we have to assume it comes from mother and father, back to the monkeys, that's the best we can do. Well, the Buddhist teaching is radically different view. This consciousness of ours, this mind of ours, Doesn't come from our parents. It's not a function of the brain. Doesn't come from a creator. That's a nutty idea for the Buddha, with respect. It's a nutty idea for the Buddha that anything that your mind, your anger, your love, your compassion, your being good at football or music can come from someone else. This is the weirdest idea for the Buddha, which sounds peculiar, of course, saying it like that. Because for the Buddha, our mind is our own. And this is where he's radically different in his presentation of things, is that it doesn't begin in the mother's womb, doesn't come from a creator, doesn't come from nothing. It's not a function of the brain. Works interdependently with the brain, no argument. But it's its own continuity. And this is where the whole business of reincarnation comes in. And of course, the commonest one we have is because we posit only the mind that works at the level of the brain. So we think it's just completely berserk idea that you think that there can be such a thing as reincarnation. This is the Buddha's observation. That's his view. It's coming from his own experience. You have to believe him. It's not speculation. It's not, it can come from a vision. He didn't make it up. It's his observation. These Indians before him came to this. And this is the ability to see this is the capacity of the mind at this subtle level when one gets this single pointed concentration, samadhi. It's all there in the literature for us to find out if we want it, to practice it. So yeah, so why would I want to navigate, become familiar with, and radically reconfigure this mind of mine? Why would I want to? Well, because Buddha's observation is that anger and touch, attachment, low self-esteem, jealousy, anxiety, depression, just half a dozen, which we're familiar with. These are the cause of our pain. Hardly rocket science. And this is also why we make a mess of our lives. And he says we can change them. They're not set in stone. That's his observation. They're not set in stone. But we've got to go quite deep in to become familiar with them and then learn to, and the crucial point, the part that's unique to the Buddhist approach, the piece that initially is like ridiculous, is that all these emotions that we talk about, emotions, they're all rooted in being, underpinned by conceptual thoughts, deep in the bones of our being. So as we develop this concentration, we can see the mind ever more clearly, ever more subtly, ever more deeply. That's the job we need to do. We don't have to wait for that to happen to start to change our minds. We can start where we are, at the conceptual level. But it's the hardest work we'll ever do. There are many things that cause us not to want to do this job. The main one is that we don't think that what goes on in our mind when it comes to all this stuff plays any role at all. So it sounds very shocking to say that. So what that means is we are completely convinced that if, yes, I'm angry, and yes, I'm depressed, and yes, I'm jealous, forget about the good qualities, loving and kind and compassionate, well, the same really. Yes, I'm loving, and yes, I'm patient. But as far as we're concerned, the main causes of those states of mind are outside things. The boyfriend's, unkindness is the cause of my anger. The boyfriend cheating on me is the cause of my jealousy. The cause of my low self-esteem is that my mother wasn't kind to me, or whatever. So we always look outside, because the outside world looms large for us, For the Buddha, that's a bit like saying that the piano is the main cause of why you're good at music. That's a joke, Or that Mr. Bach's music is the main cause of why you're good at music. No. The Buddha says your tendency to practice playing music and your effort to work on it and learn it is the main cause of you being a good musician. And then you need Mr. Bach, you need Mr. Steinway to make the piano, you need a good music teacher. Necessary, yes, but they're not the main cause, no way. Whereas we think it's the opposite when it comes to emotions. I'm this innocent victim, aren't I, of this world. Somehow someone plonked me on this planet. Mother, father, God, somebody. It's not fair. I didn't ask to get born. It's always someone else's fault. We recognize this. So this is the way that Buddha would frame the way that so-called ego works. Self-pitying me, as Lama Zopa calls it. Sounds kind of cruel. We can see that. This is very ancient in us, And the Buddha would say we bring it with us. as well as our tendency to be good or bad or good at music or football as well. All these tendencies are in our mind. We don't get these from other people. We get a brain from our mother, no argument. But the Buddha's view is that the consciousness, our mind, isn't a function of the brain, works interdependently with it. I'm not trying to be rude to neuroscientists. This is a radical point. Can't initially prove this, but this is Buddha's view, his observation from his own experience, so he puts it there, presents it to us, and it's up to us to work with it and to see if it's true or not, come to the conclusion from our own experience. His methodology says, here's what I found, here's what I've done, here's my methodology for doing this, because what he's saying is, long term, we can radically reconfigure this mind of ours, to the point, he says, which sounds pretty crazy for us, we can rid our mind utterly of all neuroses, all anger, all depression, all ego grasping, all fears and attachment and depression and jealousy, this stuff that causes so much pain and causes us to make a mess of our lives. He says this stuff is not at the core of our being. That's what he found. That's pretty dramatic. That's pretty radical. I mean, you ask a neuroscientist to give you methods to get rid of all anger, all fears, all jealousy, all depression. I think you're mentally ill. Not only that, the long-term Buddhist view would be that not only can we rid the mind of the rubbish, but we can grow the goodness, all the other parts of our mind, wisdom, clarity, kindness, love, compassion. That's who we really are, in fact. So it's a very different view, you know. And this is all part of the job of being a Buddhist, if you choose to. Or you don't have to call yourself a Buddhist, but this is this is the job that Buddha would say is what you can do that works to bring these results. So it's up to us, really. So it's got nothing to do with belief. Even the one of reincarnation, you don't have to believe it. If you hear that Einstein says for the first time in your life that E equals mc squared, it's completely mystical to you. You don't say, oh, I've got to believe that. No, he gives you his methodology for how to get there as well. Over to you. Buddha's the same. Surprising to us, because we think it's religion. You have to believe in it, you know, not like that. That's the essence of being a Buddhist, really, dealing with this. So that means we have to know our minds well. It means a lot of courage to do that, because we don't like to admit, don't like to own the unhappy parts of us. We prefer to blame someone else. Very instinctive. That's kind of the irony of ego. It's easy to, we'd rather someone else be responsible. Somehow it's very instinctive. You know, so it's hard to own it. Good as well. We never think of the good stuff, but that's ours as well. Our own tendencies. So what do you do with all this when you look into it? See if it sounds like reasonable and give it a try. You know? That's the idea. I'm going to run out of voice very quickly, I think. You can ask me some questions. So I have a bit of a break. Ask me some questions. Eileen. It's always got, I can always rely on Eileen for a question. What's your question?
Oh.
What's your Which one? What?
Online.
Oh.
People on Zoom can ask questions.
Can do it now?
I'll do it in a minute. People in the audience can ask the first question.
Okay, please ask me a question, if you have one. Okay. Any questions here? Any questions? Okay, sweetheart. What's the question?
So my question is that, like how to control my anger.
Can't hear you, darling, a bit louder.
Can you hear me?
Louder, please.
Okay. My question is how to control my anger in a situation which I find very difficult. My three sisters and I, when we get together occasionally, we don't get together a lot, but when...
Okay, so stop. So how to control anger is the question, yeah.
Because...
Based on, Sunny's been a Buddhist for many, many years.
Right.
So I'm surprised she's asking it. So why don't you tell us what you understand about anger so far and what you think the answer would be if someone else asked you that question, Sunny, because you've been around for many years and I'm a bit surprised you're asking it.
So I have an emotion of anger, and so what I would do, what I try to do with it,
how you understand anger.
Oh, how I understand anger?
Based on Buddhist views, you've studied it a bit. What do you think anger is, Sunny?
It's an emotion inside of me that arises.
It's an emotion.
That's
It's an emotion, is it? What's an emotion, darling?
A state of mind, something.
What's the source? What is it deeper beneath the emotion? What would you say, based on Buddhist view?
Okay, based on Buddhist view, it's my own it arises in me. It has nothing to do with what's outside.
What is it?
A state of mind,
What kind of state of mind?
a negative affliction, a negative affliction, a negative,
No, it's a thought. Okay, have you heard that before?
yes.
Okay, so what do you think? So if you say anger is a thought, speak the thought to me. Say the thought that anger's saying. What does anger say? If it's a thought, you have to be able to write it down. Pretend that you're angry. So say the words that you would say if you're saying you're angry. Say the words. What were those thoughts? They're thoughts, finally.
Yeah.
What are those thoughts that anger says?
So in this particular situation,
Just keep it simple, no matter whether it's Fred or a dog. Say the thoughts anger says.
that I feel powerless. I feel like
What does anger say?
I'm mad because I feel powerless. I am unable to change the situation.
Okay, so that implies you have a thought in there that wants a situation to be a different way.
Right.
Okay, good. So what's the name of that thought?
Um,
Wanting things a certain way. What's that called? Buddhist view. What's that called?
I don't understand.
You know, that's the word we use most in Buddhism.
Karma?
No. What is it? What's beneath anger?
Um, aversion?
Aversion is anger.
Right.
So what is beneath anger? You just said the words, it's not the way you want. So attachment is wanting, attachment is the word that wants things to be the way you want.
Exactly.
You agree with that?
Yeah.
So there's the source of your anger. So if you want to answer the question, that's what you've got to look at. The fact that you neurotically, and that's what attachment is, a neurotic wish, I want it to be the way I want it. That's attachment, honey. And then anger is how dare you not do what I want. Are we communicating?
Yes, but it hurts.
Stop. No one says it's easy. Don't kind of throw your hands in the air. We have to first identify it. Do you accept this analysis?
Yeah.
Okay, so their thoughts. We accepted their thoughts, right?
I accept that.
So
Yeah.
how would you change? What would you do with a thought you don't want? What would you do with it?
You argue with it. I mean, in your head.
And it's taken quite a bit of time, hasn't it? Me going back and forth with you till you finally recognize the name of those thoughts and the construction of those thoughts. So guess what you have to do? First you have to do it, recognize, but it took a while to go back and forth, isn't it? You heard the word, must have out of my mouth 1,000 times. You know, Buddha says the 3 poisons. 2 of the main ones, attachment and anger, or attachment and aversion.
Right.
Aversion or anger is a response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. You've heard these words 1,000,000 times. Would you agree?
Yes.
It took us a while for you to say it. So if you can't say it, how can you solve it? So these are the thoughts.
Right.
Underpin these emotions, as you call them, that get to the level where you're shouting and shaking, because, you know, but you've got to look at the thoughts beneath the emotion, Sonny. This is where that's why you've got to use these methods that we're talking about. Well, there's your answer.
Okay. On a different level, if I know I have I feel that I'm right. What can I say? So what do you do? What do you do when you're in a situation?
Who said you weren't right? Look, I don't want being right. Sweetie pie, you stub your toe. That's correct. It happened. But then anger is how dare I stub my toe, scream, shout, yell. They're 2 separate events. Your sister might be a maniac and she might be delusional. You are right in your analysis. That's called truth. That's got nothing to do with anger. Anger is on top of that. It's an interpretation of that fact. There is a war in Ukraine. That's a fact. Anger about it is another thing on top of the fact. So it's got to do with being right. No one's discussing who's right, but anger is an interpretation of it, all rooted in what I want. It's totally self-centered and neurotic and causes harm. Can you hear that now? Can you hear this analysis? You accept it?
Yeah.
So then what's your solution?
Well,
I mean, if you don't like your family, don't hang around with them. Who says you have to? Who's forcing you to see your bloody family? If you can't handle it, if they make you angry, just keep away from them.
Well,
Why don't you do that?
Because we're all taking care of my dad, who is elderly.
Okay, so you're taking care of your dad.
and-
How kind you are. So what's your job is to shut up, have patience. You've been doing this job for about 14 years. Work on your mind. Recognize what attachment is. I want it to be the way I want it, even though you're right. They don't like it. That's so the anger's your problem. They're being how they are is their problem. This is the type of analysis. It's brutal, but it's what you have to do.
Well, you know what? It's like, okay, like the war in Ukraine, because what's happening with, yeah, okay.
That's just your drama.
I know, my soap opera.
Scenario.
Right,
I don't care what the details are.
yeah.
We're talking about your mind, Petal. And if you want to try and find some peace and clarity, you've been doing this for a while. This is the way you analyze. So what do you think? Is it possible to change your anger into acceptance?
Oh, I can work on it, absolutely.
You already know the answer. You just said, how can I? But you know the answer. You just said you're working on it. Well, how are you working on it if you weren't sure what anger was? Well, how are you working on it if you weren't sure what attachment was? I'm asking you seriously, Sunny.
Okay.
It's an analysis. This is like trying to look at what is this and what is that. That's clay, that's blue. You've got to have your facts clear first.
Right.
So if you don't know what attachment is and how it's a conceptual story, which is all rooted on what I want, and if you don't know that anger is a response when it doesn't get what it wants, how can you work on it? You said you're working on it. You're just probably trying to suffocate your mouth, that's all. Still thinking.
Yeah, trying to, single pointed concentration to calm down. Yeah, I can, yeah.
I beg your pardon?
It makes it, yeah, you're right.
What do you mean I'm right? How do you know I'm right?
Because it hasn't helped. Hasn't helped a whole lot.
But that's concentration is one thing. Working on your anger is another, dear. So if you get concentration, it'll help you see your mind. But don't worry about that one. Come on. You have to first know what attachment and anger are. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just thinking how difficult.
What do you think your job is?
Well, my job is to argue with my own kind of like thoughts that it's.
And the thoughts you have to argue with are, just to remind us.
I want it to be different than it is.
Well, that's the first one.
Yeah.
Attachment.
Right.
I want it to be the way I want it.
Yeah.
And
that's the main one. Oh, I know.
No, you might be right. But being right is not the issue here.
Yeah.
Can you hear that? Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Can you hear that? Just when you can't stand it, that's right. We don't. We think we're being right somehow justifies being angry. We don't realize it's two separate things. I'm sure that is the one that's an eye-opener for you tonight. Do you hear my point?
Yes.
What did I just say? What's the point that you just heard?
That I need to see the thoughts and the
No, just this minute what I said, just a second ago, about being right.
Okay, I can't repeat it.
Okay.
Because I don't.
Okay.
You said you can be right, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Can you hear that point?
Okay, being right is
There
not
is a
the
war
issue.
in Ukraine. You agree that's right. It's correct. Not morally right or wrong. It's a fact.
Right.
So what do you think might be the fact that it's better for your father to be this way?
Excuse me?
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. So I think enough. Who else has got a question?
Thank you very much.
But this is the type of analysis you've got to do. You've got to hear it first.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Go. Microphone, please. Tell me.
Okay, so I have the same issue Sunny has.
We've all got the same thing. It's nothing revolutionary. So go on.
So for me, at least, anger is about action and changing things, and being right is important because you can't just accept the world. Yeah.
Let's look at the same thing. There's two events. This, I think, is something. There's one thing is the way things are. And then there's your interpretation of it. And anger, the thing that we don't realize is, like I said to Sunny, the angry response is very personal and I-based, and it's narrow. That's not to do with being right or wrong. So, it's like, and so then so here in this case, we conflate anger with intelligent criticism and action. So I remember Martin Luther King said, it's good to find fault. There is injustice, there is racism, there is poverty. That's a fact. But then you say, what can I do about it? But we assume anger is the action. How dare that happen? It seems to look like it gives us some courage, you know. But actually, if you analyze it, action is compassion. What can I do to fix it? But anger is like I-based, it gets very excited. It's hard to see the difference. This is really quite tricky, actually. It's easy to say these words. I remember the Dalai Lama being asked by a journalist, anger looks like it's exactly like you said, it's action, like you're really going to act and get things done. He said, I understand what you mean, but it's mainly anger, which is how dare it be this way. He said, it doesn't last. You end up giving up. But if it's from compassion, which is not being sentimental, but what can I do to make it better? That's perseverance. And that's not anger. That's intelligence. And it's really hard to get to that one. Do you see what I'm saying? Hugely difficult.
Is there a role for anger in Buddhism, or?
This is, okay, the part that's difficult here is in this Buddhist analysis of the mind, there's this absolutely clear distinction between the I-based, narrow, constricted, fear-based, neurotic, I don't care what word you use, unhappy, neurotic, delusional, emotional garbage states of mind. He doesn't use these words, he's more polite. They're called attachment to get what I want, anger when I don't, jealousy, low self-esteem, arrogance, all these stuff that we are very familiar with, that he says are really painful states of mind. There are those lot. And then there's the other lot, which are our saving grace, intelligence and kindness and criticism, valid criticism, compassion, all the good qualities. But I think in our culture, in our psychology, we don't distinguish. We sort of see there's some good anger and some bad anger, whereas the Buddha would say anger itself is a distorted, deluded emotion. But intelligent criticism that brings you to act and not give up, that's not anger. That's called intelligent criticism that causes you to act and not give up. But we kind of conflate them. So the ones that are neurotic for the Buddha are the ones that make us feel pain and freaked out and uncontrolled and cause the problems. So we have to learn to see that that's one thing, but seeing a fault and trying to fix it is another, where we tend to think action, just like you said, is called anger. So it's hard to see the difference. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So get out there and shout and be loud and get things to change, but that doesn't mean it has to be anger. Anger is neurotic, I-based, panic-stricken. It's like you're having a mental breakdown when it's anger. And it's completely I-based, and it's all to do with getting what I want, and panic-stricken when I don't. But it's hard to distinguish those parts of it. So don't chuck the baby off the bathwater. Giving up anger doesn't mean you become passive. That's how we think of it. Not like that. Not like that. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
So one other question, just on a practical basis, like what is something you can do to cultivate the compassion action versus the negative driven?
I understand. So is there an example? You're like a bit of a political activist or something, or what?
Well, or just in an everyday life. Where do you start?
This is really hard. I mean, the very first step is, the very first step, Buddha's basically saying, don't even work on the mind yet, but control the servants of the mind. It sounds kind of boring. So, if I'm angry inside here, how dare you do that to me? And, it'll vomit out my mouth. It's that does the problem. The punching that does the problem, causes the problems. Look at the world. I think in the most simple sense, we can see the worst thing in the world is anger, because look at what people do with their body and speech as a result of it. They harm others, drop bombs, kill each other. It's not being sarcastic. It's deeply true. And it's as simple as saying that's the action of anger. So forget about trying to control the anger in the mind. That's really intense, especially when it's a hard habit, an old habit. First is to control the body and speech. At least in your relationship, at least make a decision to not say angry words. This is such a tremendous practice. You can't even believe it, but it just sounds kind of boring, because you have this strong feeling that I'm allowed to say what I like, Do you understand? We really feel like it's a virtue. And if you've got a strong enough relationship, somebody I'm thinking of recently, who's been together with the same person for 60 years, we always said everything we felt, she said, like as if it's a virtue. I mean, maybe some relationships can last 60 years, but I think that breaks most of them because it becomes a point where you can't get the words back, you know. There's so much damage. So, I mean, just to look at this is really intense. So to control the body and speech first is pretty outrageous practice. And this doesn't mean suppress. We have two options in our culture: vomit it all out or live in denial. But this approach, the Buddha's approach of learning to know what's going on in here really intimately, we don't know what's going on in here until it vomits out the mouth. That's our problem. But learning to develop this awareness of your own cognitive process, all the thoughts and feelings and emotions in here, which is what we're capable of. Learning to know this first, and then when I'm with others, they have a saying, they say, when you're with others, control your body and speech. When you're on your own, you can control your mind. So this sounds kind of boring. I'll walk around all being nice people, behaving nicely, not saying bad words, but 99% of our problems would be solved if we did that. So the speech and the body is one thing, then you really can work on your mind. So this is a really good answer also, Sunny. I mean, we never think, oh, I must control my speech, you know. We just vomit everything out because we think I'm allowed to, but we just don't think of the damage that it does to ourselves, not to mention other people. This is a major part of the first level of practice. Do you understand what I mean? Is it not what you wanted to hear? I'm sure we don't want to hear it. See, the big point here is also for Buddha, the point, and this is really the meaning of karma. It's very simple, that everything we do and say and think, forget what it does to others. First point is, whatever I say and I do and I think and do and say, that is the process that produces the person I become. So it's hardly rocket science to think, if I vomit out every word I say, gossip and badmouth and shout and yell and be mean and lie and steal and kill, I mean, forget what you do to others. What do you think? What's the kind of person I'm turning myself into? Some dreadful maniac, surely. But that even is surprising to us. We don't think I produce myself. I think I'm the handiwork of God or someone else, and it's all their fault, and I'm allowed to do what I like and say. I mean, it's very kind of demented how we think. So this is a really powerful point. I mean, you know that when it comes to carpentry, you don't say, I'm allowed to cut it however I like. Well, you can, but you won't get a table if one leg is 4 inches shorter than the other one. You've got to obey the rules, you know. And everything you think in your mind about carpentry is the process that determines the carpenter you become. We get it when it comes to those types of things, but not when it comes to becoming a happy person or a suffering person. You see my point? It seems so simple, but it's quite shocking. We don't think this way, you know. So the Buddha's whole approach is we produce ourselves. Yeah, we're impacted upon by the outside world. You can't say we're not. But we're the boss, which is pretty intense. And it's up to us. And to not just believe that, we've got to look into ourselves and see how it makes us feel if I scream and shout and yell or lie and steal or kill or do other things that harm others that in fact are harming me. It's quite a kind of practical, really. But because we're so addicted, well, certainly I was a Catholic, you know, so we're very addicted to the idea of if we think the world is created by a creator, and we think I'm created by a creator, and the concept of a creator very much is you do what the creator says. I'm not criticizing, I always quote this. My Catholic priest friend, I asked him, by definition, what is a sin, you know, a negative action? He says, by definition, a sin is doing what God said not to do. So no wonder we have guilt and, you know, like mummy said, don't do this. And so we assume if she doesn't see me, oh, I got away with it. Well, that's a bit like for the Buddha going to your doctor and she says, don't smoke. Why not? Because you'll get cancer, Robina. But then you go home and you see the doctor's not there. So out come the Marlboros. Oh, I won't get cancer. She doesn't see me smoke. I mean, we'd laugh at that, you know. So the Buddha's approach is that good ethics is natural law, not to do with Buddha. It's not to do with doing what somebody said. That's ridiculous. Because in Buddhist view, there's no punisher and there's no rewarder. We produce ourselves. That's really the meaning of karma. We produce ourselves. And that takes a while to see because we don't believe it's true. I'm allowed to be angry, we say. I'm allowed to be jealous, or I can't help being jealous, or jealous is right. What do you mean I should change? He should change. This is the way ego works, you know. Are you with me? Huh? With me? Are we communicating?
I am. Could you just go one step further and like conceptually understand? I mean,
One step further meaning?
like super, does this mean like meditating in a particular way? Like, what's the first step? I understand.
The very first step,
Yeah.
the very first step is to know it's possible to become a happy, fulfilled person. Speak very simply. And the method is to control your body, your speech, and your mind. That's the essence. That's the method. How? First start by thinking it's possible. And then you have to start. Everything exists on the tip of the wish. You have to decide. Like, how do you become a carpenter? You got to first want it. And then you go to people who know how to go to carpenters and ask them for the methods. Same here. You go to people who know the methods, who are doing this job. I'm talking Buddhism here. I'm not talking Christianity or any other method. But, and this is not as if Buddha owns only this approach. Lots of people think this, but this is the Buddhist approach. So you go to a place that teaches this, and go to classes like this. And then the very first thing is you have to think about it. I'd like to do that. And the first point would be to start with a simple kind of meditation where you sit down for 5 minutes and pay attention to your mind, or pay attention. You start by developing some concentration. You develop starting by doing techniques that help you cultivate a bit of focus. This is what the world means by mindfulness, so that you're stepping out of your head and you're attempting to focus, because eventually when you get off your cushion and go down to the kitchen and your partner's slurping their coffee, don't wait till they want to murder you, just slurping their boring old coffee. Whereas once normally you just blurt it out, I can't stand your slurping because you're angry. But now, because you're watching your breath for 5 minutes and you're just able, and one of the benefits of that is you can't help but hear what's going on in your head. So, when you go down to the kitchen, and before it comes out the mouth now, because you've also made a decision, I'm going to control my mouth. You're going to catch the annoyance before it gets to the mouth. That's how it works, one step at a time. It's to do with intention. I will, I want, I will. The confidence in the possibility, and then the techniques are all there. You follow them. Okay, don't hold your breath. It takes time. That's the principle. That's the theory. Does that make sense? Okay. Good. What's your name? Ted. Okay. Good, Ted. Thank you so much. Keep trucking. Okay, come on. They can talk to me? Okay, talk to me, Eileen. Well, Eileen's always got a question. You can guarantee Eileen has a question. What is it, sweetheart?
Good to see you.
Bit louder, baby.
I think you answered a lot already, but I go back to the same thing when you're sitting in meditation, the 5, 10, whatever it is, and you're watching.
Okay. Go on, Eileen.
All right, so I asked the same question. I'm just trying to understand when we're sitting in meditation forever, how long it is.
Eileen, I can't hear you at the moment. You need to be quiet. We're going to sort you out.
Okay.
Bit better. Keep going.
Okay.
Talk.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No. Okay.
We were here. Sean.
Okay.
Oh. I see.
Can you hear me now, Robina?
That's better.
All right.
Speak to me.
All right, great. So I always ask the same question. When you're in meditation and you're breathing and you're watching the mind, and of course—
No, stop, Eileen.
Oh, all right.
Stop. One type of concentration meditation is focusing on your mind. Another type of concentration meditation is you're focusing on your breath. So which one are you talking about?
Well, if you're focused on the breath, the thoughts all come.
I beg your pardon?
I said, if I'm watching my breath, the thoughts come.
Okay, stop. So the concentration technique, this is good for 10. You start by sitting down and you decide, I'm going to pay attention to my breath. So that's what your job is, simply to pay attention with determination to the breath. So when you wander off the breath, you catch yourself and you bring yourself back to the breath. That's the technique. So naturally, because thoughts are never stopping. They're going to
Mhm.
continue. Of course they are. But what we're trying to do here is not follow the thoughts. We're trying to
Right.
stay there, watching the breath, and allow the thoughts to come and allow the thoughts to go.
Yes.
So what's the question?
So, well, the question is analyzing the thoughts. That
Now, that's a
seems,
different discussion. That's not the job when you're doing concentration. So
all right,
that's your cushion. Now you've done your concentration meditation. You're developing a little bit of ability to stay on the breath. You can't help but hear your thoughts, which is good. You don't go into them. Now you
Right.
stop your meditation and you go to the kitchen. So now what's your question?
Well, I guess my question is the thoughts are coming very quickly. Go back to the breath, they come quickly. You're trying not
Oh,
to
you
go.
mean during the meditation they come back? Yes, they do that. So what
Yes.
is the question about what you're doing in meditation or
Right,
what
so-
you do when you stop your meditation?
Well, I guess both. But the thing is, in
Or which-
meditation,
No, be
it's hard-
precise, Eileen. Is
Well,
it what is the name? Listen, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Meditation isn't just some abstract term that refers to sitting on your bottom with your eyes closed. There are many, many techniques. So the one we've established that you're doing, you decided to watch your breath because you're trying to concentrate. So
Yes.
while you're doing that, Eileen, you do nothing else. You do not do analysis. You do not get involved in the thoughts. You leave them alone. You mind your own business and you simply pay attention to the breath. You're developing the ability to stay focused on one thing. That's the job to be done in that meditation.
that
So what kind of
clarifies it.
meditation are you talking about?
What you just said is what I'm trying to do.
Okay, then, so you let the thoughts be, baby, but you
Yeah.
can't help but out of the corner of your eye see them and hear them, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's good, Eileen.
Yes.
That's good, because now you know what the problems are.
Yes.
Normally, we don't even know what we're thinking until they vomit out the mouth. We don't ever pay attention. So this is a brand new experience for us to sit there and watch the boring old breath. We can't help but hear them. So let them be there. Don't engage, but observe. It's okay. Out of the corner of your eye. That's fine. That's good.
Right. Yes.
Good. So then in your daily life, that's what I said. And that now you go to the kitchen, instead of blurting out your anger to your partner or your hubby or somebody, because you're now deciding to get focused, and then also you're deciding you're going to control your speech. You've made that decision as part of your practice. So now you go down to the kitchen, hubby's slurping his coffee yet again, but because you're practicing, you're going to catch the angry, annoyed thought. How dare he slurp his coffee? He knows I don't like it, but you catch it before it gets out of the mouth, Eileen.
Right. Yes.
That's a sign of success. And then even more, you hear it and then you argue with it. That's the practical application every day. You hear the how dare he slurp his coffee. He knows I don't like it. So of course, like Sonny, you think you're right, you know. So then but here we've got to then see the stress that is causing my mind. This is not easy to see that the angry thoughts are making you distressed, right? But of course, we think his slurping is making me distressed. That's a big one, to see that it's your angry interpretation that's making you stressed. So then you try, if you can't handle it, you get out of the way. If you can handle it, you try to you argue with yourself. It's okay. He's allowed to slurp his coffee. It won't last long. It'll be okay. You argue with it, and before you know it, one day you get out in the kitchen, you don't mind his bloody old slurping. You change your interpretation of it. That's a simple example of how the result of focus, you see what's going on and you make a decision and you work it in your mind before you get it out of the mouth.
Right.
You with me?
Yes, and it clarifies it. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, but it's intensely difficult. I mean,
Yes.
actually, as Ted said, what's the first step? The first step is to want to do it, to want to see the advantage to me of wanting to change my thoughts. I mean, that's the major problem. Most of us will go, what are you talking about? Why should I change my thoughts? Excuse me, I'm fine. It's everybody else's wrong. So to get to the point where you see that your thoughts play a role, that's pretty incredible. That's pretty wise. It's not the normal world, I tell you. That's what I mean, Ted. I mean, you look at your sisters. I'm not being rude about them. You know, most people, we just, as Lama Zopa says, and it sounds shocking to say it, he says the vast majority of all people on this planet really have absolutely no idea what goes on in their mind in relation to all this stuff plays any role at all in their lives, in their happiness and suffering. This sounds almost too hard to believe, but it's true, because they're convinced that the husband slurping his coffee is the main problem. My anger is justified. That's it. You're justified because they're wrong. That's exactly the world. I mean, look at the world. So all these delusions, they're like fundamentalists, you know. Attachment wants it to be, I want it. The sense of I is huge. We can see how the sense of I rises up. So huge, you know. But this is so tricky, because then we think, oh, I've got to squash my I and I've got to have low self-esteem. No, chucking the baby out with the bathwater. I've got to give up anger and become passive. No, because we don't make a difference between, like you said, intelligent criticism and anger. We don't see the difference. We don't see the difference between being right and anger. And that's the revelation. That anger is an interpretation on top of the analysis. You stub your toe is a simple example. Pain does come, no question. It's a fact. There is pain in the toe. That's a fact. But then your anger is on top of that. How dare that happen? It's wrong. It shouldn't happen. And what we don't realize is that that anger, that emotional energy, increases the pain, increases the suffering tremendously. So it's a really hard job to do. Sounds easy. But we've got to see the benefit of wanting to do this, and then have this ability to distinguish in our mind the difference between these kinds of thoughts. It's really quite subtle. It's quite hard to see. That's why I always like to use the example of my friends in prison. They have no choice. They can't get out. These garbage dumps, you know, so they change their minds instead. I mean, it's pretty radical. Doesn't seem possible, especially when you've been accused wrongly of doing something like murder, and there you are in your cell 23 hours a day. I mean, it seems almost impossible to think that you could work on your mind in order to stay sane and become happy. But I have many examples of people, you know. I mean, one of the examples I think is an amazing one is, what's that man's name? That's South African, Mandela. He's famous. He is famous for exactly that, you know. Okay, forget the fact that he was a revolutionary and all that fact. Forget that. But he had this ability to stay steady and to never, ever give in to all the garbage in the mind. You know. In the end, he won everything. Never lost his sense of self, a correct sense of self, never lost his dignity, never lost his humanity. That, I mean, we hear people like this. It's possible. It shows, you know. So this is just the Buddhist approach to how to do it. It's possible. And we are the beneficiaries. This is not some kind of moralistic issue. This is a method, Buddha's method for how to become a happy, fulfilled person. Doesn't mean you don't have, doesn't mean you can't get rich, doesn't mean you can't have the best sex on the planet, doesn't mean you can't be a good carpenter. That's not contradicted. This is right from the inside, you know. Then you be a good carpenter and you have good sex, much better sex. True. Because you're a together person, you know. That's it. That's it. But it's a lifelong job, so don't hold your breath. What else? Well, I've still got some boys here. Who's that? Marcy. How Paula? There's Paula. Mary. I mean, the thing is, we've all heard this 1,000 times, haven't we? And I've been saying it probably 20,000 times for the last 45 years, but I'm still not bored by it. Every time I say it, I go, oh, maybe that's a good idea. I might try. Huh? Who's got some questions? Okay.
So it's interesting to hear you describe kind of arguing with yourself when
Describe what?
whenever people have spoken about experiencing anger.
Yes.
It seems like I've heard you describe that the proper response is to argue with yourself.
Yes.
And it frankly runs counter to the way that mindfulness has helped me
Tell me.
counterbalance my
Yeah.
anger, which for me is just awareness. When
What is just awareness? What do you mean by that?
being able to observe
Observe what?
subtler and subtler experiences of what's
mind.
happening in my
Observing your
body.
mind. Well, it's your mind. It's either you got body and mind. It's either one or the other. So which is it you're talking about? I mean,
think it's
listen
both.
to the terminology I'm using here. Do you have body or you have mind? So which are you talking about observing?
I think both. I don't think it's terribly important to the.
Beg your pardon? You don't think what?
I don't think it's terribly important to.
Also, the difference
The-
between the pain in the toe and anger about the pain, they're different. There's no distinction.
Sure, I see that.
I beg your pardon? There is a difference, there's not a difference.
I see the difference that you're pointing out.
So one is the mind and interpretation. The anger is how dare that happen to me and self-pity. And then the other one is merely pain in the toe. But we tend to think anger is a natural response to it. So what's your method for, tell me your method. You said,
I think there's also more just like anger has a physical experience in the body.
I'm using Buddhist, you might be using Buddhist, but I'm telling you the analysis that I'm learning in the Buddhist texts and the Buddhist teachers that I've got. So I can only
Sure.
say those words. Mind is thoughts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious. That's consciousness, not physical. And then we have a body. We're embodied. We have eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tactile consciousness. So we have a body, and then we have thoughts and feelings and emotions. And they're very linked.
Right.
But we need to distinguish between them. The stubbing of the toe is one thing, the anger is another. The sweet word, girlfriend or boyfriend, like, triggers a pleasant
So,
feeling. They're two different things.
I have a dog who's been scratching me, and my immediate response is almost like self-defense. So I get angry at the dog, which I would like to
Okay.
reach a state of calmness where I don't like.
Sorry, what?
I would like to reach a state of calmness where I don't have to
You said
react with anger.
awareness is your method for doing that. So how does it work? Tell me about it.
So I'm with you that experiencing the feeling of the scratching on my face is physical,
That's right.
and then I tense up,
That's right.
and that's also physical
It is, but it's a response to anger.
for sure.
So that's
But it's still
mind and body
the
are
mind.
It's the response
Right.
to anger. Like when you
Sure.
tense up when you stub your toe.
But
Same.
I'm saying the awareness of my mind and body, regardless of which one it is.
No, excuse me. That's just you got to decide which one you want to work on. You don't have to change the pain. You can't do that. But you
Right,
can
I
change the
agree.
interpretation of the pain. Surely that's what you want to do. You just said it yourself. You want to see the anger. So what's your method for changing that anger if you want to? I'm assuming you want to. So what's your method for changing it? Because you said I get angry.
And it's obviously imperfect because I continue to experience anger, but
What's your method?
But-
There's a technique, isn't there? So what's your technique?
I have found that in the moment, I don't have much control over whether or not I get angry, but
Okay, so before you go further, sweetheart, this is the key. This is the key. Do you think it's possible? That's the point I'm talking about. That's what Buddha's telling you. Of course it's possible. You've got to know it's possible before you do it.
well, I know it's possible because certain days,
What's the method for catching it to the point where you do have control? So what's your method? You said, oh, it's just awareness. You said that.
on days where I feel more meditative, whether as it,
I have to debate with you. I can't help it. What are you saying? What are you talking about? Can you come down to earth, please?
yes, we practice largely.
Who's we? Talk about yourself. You're an
I practice, and I suspect you also practice, but I can't know for sure. Practice to cultivate awareness,
Of
what we're experiencing.
Why? Why the hell would you want to do that? It sounds like hideous. It sounds like I'm being aware of what's in my garden.
I can't tell you for sure, but I do know that in these states that I'm describing as awareness, that you could describe it another way, I happen to experience these more positive experiences of love and compassion.
There's no doubt if you sit there and watch your breath or watch whatever and you become calm. This is a wonderful experience, but that's just, it's not going to help you. If it doesn't help you and see the anger before it comes, then what's the bloody point? Just get a nice feeling, meditative. It's a sentimental rubbish. Excuse me. It's much more precise than that, not so mystical. Forgive me. I'm so happy you have nice feelings. But nice feeling is hardly the point. It's learning a technique to see your bloody mind at a subtler level so you can hear the energy, the angry thoughts, and then you can catch them. Just like I said about coming down to hear your husband's, you're slurping his coffee or your dog biting you, that you can catch the thoughts and you won't bite into them. And then you will have control. That's the whole point the Buddha's telling us. And awareness is absolutely a part of it. Of course it is. It's absolutely got to be aware, but you have to see of what.
Right. So I think I might just be caught on a word here, but hearing you previously describe that process as arguing with yourself.
No, that's the next step. Because the anger is, you just said you can't control it. That means it's strong. That means the impulse to be angry is strong, which you'll
Sometimes.
So one of the approaches then is when you catch the angry thought, like the slurping of the coffee. Use a simple example. There's hubby slurping his coffee again. You've got to catch that before it gets to the mouth. And that's in the mind. The thoughts are there. And because you catch it, you want to change that. You don't want to just suffocate the anger, which is how you're suggesting. You've got to recognize the anger, the response that you say you can't control, is from the mind, from your thoughts, conceptual thoughts. And the anger is a conceptual thought. So you catch it. And then before it vomits out the mouth, you can then argue with it and change it. And before you know it, you will enjoy the slurping of the coffee, or you will avoid the dog's claws. It's a really intelligent, subtle process that I suggested you're missing. What do you? I'm just telling you Buddhist techniques. I'm not making a word up here. But it's not typically what's taught when people think of mindfulness and awareness stuff. It's sort of like, okay, I think it's a bit like, I'm being a bit sarcastic. It's a bit like, oh, I've got really good mindfulness. I'm really good awareness. And I'm being aware of my garden. And I can even get to the point where I have such awareness that I can even replicate it in a drawing. Well, I'm very happy for you. But what good is that if I can't identify and distinguish between the weeds and the herbs? There's got to go further. Buddha says we can rid the mind utterly of all delusions and neuroses. That's what he means by nirvana. And they don't just disappear into space. It needs intense hard work. So you have to imbue that mindfulness with intelligence. You said before, oh, it doesn't matter, mind or body, same. I would suggest that's not right. You need to be able to distinguish, because the thoughts are going there 1,000 thoughts a second. Western psychology says that. We need to become aware of them. And when you've got samadhi, you're going to be brilliantly aware of your mind. This brilliant technique these Indians invented 3,000 years ago, which Buddha uses. It's got incredible clarity. To do what? Not just space out, but to hear these conceptual thoughts and fundamentally reconfigure them. And then eventually you will never get angry with your dog. You might get hurt, but you won't get angry.
So last question on this, if I may. My last question on this, if I may, is you described before that just paying attention to your breath will help some of the weeds perhaps die down, and some of the herbs.
Watching just doing single-pointed concentration technique, which is what Buddha teaches, it's training yourself to stay focused and not just absorb into every thought. And you're training yourself to stay on one thing. It's a technical skill that's called concentration. So that skill enables you. What you're trying to do is step out of your head. You don't buy into all the thoughts. So out of the corner of your eye, you can't help but hear them.
Exactly.
That's good. Okay, when your concentration gets deeper, all the thoughts will go, but that's advanced. Don't hold your breath.
But so that's been my experience, that paying attention, cultivating concentration.
What do you focus on? What do you do? Your breath?
For the most part, yes.
So you can't help but hear your thoughts, isn't it?
Say again?
You can't help but hear your thoughts.
Of course.
And that's good. Do you know why it's good?
Why?
You probably think it's bad because you want them to all go away, right?
Well, I don't feel that way. No, I don't.
Like them not to be there, right? Isn't it?
I don't. No.
Don't fight. Then why do you bother watching your boring old breath?
because as I do so, I find that the degree to which I identify with the thoughts is softened.
Good, good, good. This is going well. This is well, but they're still there.
Yeah.
And that's a good step. And then when you're in the middle of the kitchen and your hubby or your dog or your wife or whoever it is you live with is slurping their coffee, you can catch them and you don't identify with them, but you hear them and you go, it's okay. Slurping coffee is nice. I'm enjoying it. Before you know it, you love the slurping of coffee. You've changed your mind. Are we communicating?
Yes. One more question. Do you,
What for? My what?
You're too close to the
Oh, I'm not. Look, they can see me.
oh, when you are.
Okay, darling. Talk to me.
do you experience anger like these days?
Honey, Tom, I'm a long way from full realizations of nirvana. Forget Buddhahood. But, you know, it becomes something that as I'm doing this job, trying to do it for these years, you learn to, you know, you fundamentally, you're getting less and less and less and less and less. More contentment, less attachment, less neurotic, I want this and that, and less aversion, less fear of when bad things happen. Of course, you just get better and better. But you don't give up, you know, if you, yeah, so you I still sound like an angry person, but it's quite different. People think I'm angry because I shout and yell, you know. Do you understand?
Yeah. And what's your like relationship with it when it arises? Your anger, if and when it arises.
Before it gets anywhere. Sort of shut up and make it go away and change my story. Because it's just a conceptual story. It's an interpretation. How dare that happen to me? And the manner that it's rooted in is attachment to get what me wants. I mean, anger is the response to when attachment doesn't get what it wants. That's a huge analysis. So the real problem is the attachment to get what I want. It's totally self-centered. Do you argue with it? You argue with it, or you just let the other person have it, or you change your thought. Or and the more you deal with it at a subtle level, the less it becomes emotional. So you can stay steady, you know. That's the job every day. That's the job every day, being a Buddhist. Based on your meditation every day, you get better and better and better at the concentration, better and better and better at the analysis, better and better and better at seeing things as they are, being more realistic. All these things, you know. Do you understand? Makes sense?
Thank you.
And if it's not working, then I mean, I'm a bit of an idiot trying all these years, isn't it? Kind of bashing your head against a brick wall. So one step at a time. So you're finding you're getting somewhere, becoming a nicer, wiser, more content human being. Are you? Good then.
Trying.
I'm very proud of you. One day you should rejoice in your success every day. Good. Be satisfied. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Billy.
Bill. My mother was known as Bill and my dad was Ted. Bill and Ted.
We're both here.
My mother's name was Agnes, but they wanted a boy, so they called him Billy. That's right. My father was called Teddy. Teddy and Billy. There you go. Sorry, a bit personal there. Okay, questions, people. Or is it time to go home? What's the time? 8:40. It's time to go home. One more question before we go home? Before my voice goes before everything. Vivek, have you got a question? How are you, Vivek? I'm happy to see you. Vivek's in India. How are you, my dear? Are you well, Vivek?
Venerable,
You well?
Venerable, I don't have, yes, Venerable, I'm well.
I can't hear you, darling. Come closer.
Can you hear me?
Too difficult, Vivek.
Venerable, am I audible?
Come close to the mic. Come close to the computer.
Yes, Venerable. Now?
Yeah, but I only see your forehead. But talk. I can try and hear you. Go on.
Venerable,
Go on,
I
Vivek.
don't have a question, but I want to share experiences with you, if you allow me.
What's he say? What does he say?
He'd like to share experiences with you, with your permission.
What?
Question.
What's he saying?
He doesn't have a question, but he wants to share an experience.
Okay, so share your experience, Vivek. Tell us your experience.
Few months ago, Venerable, I was also very melancholic.
Where's the speaker? Oh, up in the ceiling. Speaker, Vivek, tell us your experience.
Am I audible clear enough, Venerable, or not?
Am I audible?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit deaf, Vivek. That's my problem. So they'll interpret for me as you talk. Come on. How long will this experience take to tell us, Vivek? 20 minutes? 3 minutes?
No, small experiences, Venerable.
I can hear you. Come on. Tell us your experience, Vivek.
Okay. Venerable, 3 to 4 months ago, I was also melancholic and occupied with thoughts of anger, depression, and anxiety.
Hang on a second. What did he say?
Months ago, he was consumed with feelings of anger and depression.
Okay, good. And now, Vivek, how are you these days?
Venerable, I meditated for 2 to 3 hours every day on the basic aspect of impermanence and compassion.
What does he meditate on? Hang on.
Impermanence and compassion.
3 hours a day, he said. So you sit in meditation for 3 hours a day, Vivek. Is that right?
Yes, Venerable, one to 1.5 shift per day.
What? What? Say that again, what?
Venerable, 1 to 1.5 hour of a shift of meditation.
I think he says 2 1.5 hour.
Okay, this is good. So where do you get your meditation techniques from, Vivek?
Venerable, when I meditated, I constantly meditated on the impermanence of sensation. And when I occupied with the thoughts of anger and depression and anxiety like that, automatically these thoughts vanish away from my mind. This is the experiences I particularly share with
So
you.
this is happening for you every day. You're getting better and better at it, Vivek.
Yes, Venerable.
Wonderful. Well, you're a great success story. You must give us some
Yes,
advice. You better come to New York and give us some advice, Vivek. I'm very happy or impressed.
Yes, Venerable, because those thoughts come and automatically vanish away when I meditated on the impermanence. So
Good. That's pretty incredible. That's one of Buddha's first teachings, actually, to see how things
yes,
change. This is very good. Well done. Congratulations,
thank you.
Vivek. I'm very impressed. Thank you so much for telling us. So we should do more impermanent meditation. I never say that one. But that's pretty powerful, Vivek, because it's one of the first truths that Buddha told us, isn't it? That things change. But when we're stuck in it, we don't realize that. This is very good, Vivek.
Yes,
Thank you so
thank you
much.
so much, Venerable.
Thank you. So I think we should finish on a good note. Vivek's success. Okay. Not my stupid stories about control your attachment. Just think about impermanence. He's right. He's right. The first teaching Buddha gave, actually, the Vipassana technique, was to focus on the sensations of your body so that you could see that things change. With his teaching, he wanted us to get insight into impermanence. Very, very brilliant. Well done, Vivek. So we finished. My voice is finished as well. So, okay, we had a productive day. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
And we'll goodbye. See you next time. Okay. And I'll see if I can sing a prayer. Dangchub, Semchub, Rinpoche, Ma Kye Panam, Kye Guchig, Kye Panyampa, Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne Gondu, Pelba Shog. That was the second one. Made bodhicitta grow and grow in the hearts of all. And then that's enough. That's good enough. Okay. That's enough. Okay. No more prayers. That's it. Goodbye. See you next time. Thank you, darling people. So kind.